The prime goal of government is to protect the minority of the opulent from the majority. And in order to do that, you've got to fragment the majority so they really can't get together and do very much. And you have to concentrate power in the wealth of the nation.
Good afternoon, I'm Michael Malice, and let that be your welcome for the next hour. We're going to cut right to it because we have the man himself, Mike Cernovich, author, filmmaker, sometimes journalist. Mike, I think the only person who has more scalps than you is Elizabeth Warren.
Hey, you got to get me already, man. I'm I used to be. I actually did a cryptocurrency with a couple of guys from Harlem that's going to air in a week. And I was like, oh, man, I was like playing along with some of the jokes. I'm like, oh, God, I can't have any fun anymore, man. Like everything I do now is just boring. I'm the most boring man alive.
Yeah, but the air around you is hardly boring. I mean,
true.
Here's what's insane. So what's his name? James Gunn? Is that his name? The first name, James?
James, yeah.
James Gunn, a director for Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Were you the one who found old tweets of his that
I was tipped off? Okay. And then I found so I was tipped off that he had made some like racial humor jokes. And then I go, what? This guy never deleted his tweets. Let me do a run with my search terms. And then that's when I found the bad stuff.
So there's two ideologies about this, and I got into there's two schools of thought, right? One school of thought is you don't fight an evil by adopting it and practicing it. The other school of thought is F that. The persuasion is not going to change the behavior of people who are genuinely convinced that they are angels, and the only way they're going to modify their behavior is if they have to feel some pain.
Okay, so the question that I get from a lot of people is they go, well, you're opposed to this stuff. Why do you do it? Well, first of all, James Gunn is a special case. So I have a whole project. It's kind of like a Project Mayhem style thing. And we found verified journalists using the N-word and saying H-E-I-L with the other H after it. Oh, but they're satirists, you know. And I actually have been emailing people being like, hey, you know, maybe you want to delete this kind of thing. Because if you're not, but the pedo stuff and you work around kids, that isn't like me proving a point. So I have two responses to your question, which is, you know, Nietzsche said, don't, you know, if you fight with monster, beware you don't become a monster. One is, all right, bro, if you say children touch you and you like that, there's no punchline. That's not like, that isn't a joke. That's just you being, and he's in his 40s. That's just you being like creepy. They were talking about Bieber. Bieber was 16 years old at the time, talking about, you know, pleasuring themselves. So that's a different level of what we found on Gunn. And that's why the media is so quick to go, oh, it was just a few jokes. No, it wasn't a few jokes. It was comments, expressions, very, very sick stuff. So he's unique. But I have, you know, like Sopan Deb, I found a tweet of his, and that was just to prove a point that, hey, you know, two can play at this game. He made an inappropriate remark, but yeah, James Gunn is a different case.
Yeah, and I think it is fair to say that it's case by case because there's many people who you would not disagree with politically, excuse me, but that are not venal and are not bad people per se. Whereas those who are not, they're those who are just not acting in good faith. I want to pick your brain on this. It seems to me that a lot of times, like a good example is when Ali Beth Stuckney, whatever, so I apologize for getting her name wrong. She had that very clearly edited video of her interviewing Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, right? And this is a technique that's been done for decades. Even The Simpsons satirized it, where Homer went on like a news magazine and they cropped him and the clock in the background changes to show. So this has been known. And yet when it comes to this, all of a sudden the press just feels everything has to be taken literally. They've never seen anything like this, and they act like they're confused. And I went on a tear on my other show, Nightshade. I'm like, you can't tell me that you write for the Washington Post and you've never heard of The Onion. Like, that's literally not possible. You can't be an urban sophisticate and pretend you've never seen satire, especially this, which was not very sophisticated satire. It wasn't even pretending to, the point was it was badly edited as a cue.
Yeah, and moreover, she had done an interview like that with Ben Shapiro. So, yeah, that's a great, you and I actually talked about it, and that's why I look forward to reading your book, which is one of, we all think of like fake news where they fabricate sources and everything. If you're at the New York Times and the Washington Post, you're not fabricating sources. What they do, though, is they say, oh, this guy over here on the left, ha ha ha, what a jokester, what a clever satirist. These guys are so funny, LOL. And then when the right does the same thing, they go, oh my God, Ali is fabricating fake news, claiming this interview happened. I can't believe it. Then they become all, so that's disingenuous. It's just not honest. And they all knew that it wasn't honest.
And here's another example off the top of my head. Stephen Colbert has literally given the Nazi salute on CBS, which is like your grandparents' version of corporate television. Meanwhile, when Laura Ingraham gave a talk at the Republican National Convention and was waving to people in the crowd, they took a screen cap of her outstretched arm and said, look, she gave a Nazi salute at the Republican convention, where there's not even a pretense when you look at the footage she's doing anything but waving. So it's things like this. You and I have discussed this in the past. I talk to conservatives a lot. There's a difference between people who make mistakes or even people who have an agenda and see things through that lens, which you can wrap your head around very easily, and people who are not acting in good faith and are the Walter Durantes of today.
Yeah, the whole line thing, right? Like, for example, James Gunn, he just made jokes. Well, no, he didn't just make jokes. He deleted his blog like that because he had a post on his blog about how a monkey went on the set of a child's show and ejaculated on a child, and he said that was really funny and made him happy. Okay, like, that's not a joke. That's just, you're a very creepy, at best, you're a creepy person. That isn't like, oh, LOL, let me tell you a funny joke about a real thing that happened that's appalling that I just think is like really hilarious. Okay, it's not really a joke. But the media goes, oh, James Gunn made a bunch of pedophile jokes. Oh, and have you seen Mike Cernovich's tweets, which are completely 100% real? There's no satire. He wasn't making fun of a Jezebel article. He didn't take an article from a feminist magazine and change a couple words to kind of prove a point about how insane. No. He didn't do any satire. So if you're a conservative and you make a joke, that is who you are and what you believe. But if you say, oh, yeah, you talk about children in sexual circumstances, oh, that's just a joke. Lighten up, people. Well, what's wrong with you? What are you, the joke police now?
But it's also interesting how immediately when they say, oh, he's just a jokester, let's suppose, and this isn't that hard to disagree with, there's two ways of looking at it. Let's suppose someone has a sick sense of humor, and then let's suppose it's also possible that they're just a creep. The fact that they're immediately presenting this as one, as opposed to, here's two ways of looking at this. On the one hand, maybe this is a sense of humor you don't get, and you think it's like funny in a gross way, like if a gorilla took a dump on a kid, you could, whatever. On the other hand, no, this is sick. They don't present it as these are the two choices. It's always, this was clearly a joke. But it's not clearly a joke, even if that is your belief that it's a joke. To frame it as such in an objective manner is duplicitous to some extent.
Or grill the guy.
Yeah.
I mean, every time I sit down with some journalists, they're like, and on August 14th, 2003, you tweeted out I'm like, first of all, I was quoting somebody, but oh my God, you're like the 100th, and they all think they're like checkmating me. I'm like, oh God, this, and this, and this. And they're like, well, yeah, but isn't that fair? I'm like, okay. Well, why don't you ask me about the Susan Rice story? Why don't you ask me about John Conyers' story? Yeah. Why don't you ask me about my book that sold almost 100,000 copies now? Why don't you ask me about my 2 films and ask me about the bullshit? So what they do is, the way they frame the narrative is they act like a joke. If you're a conservative or right wing, and I'm definitely not conservative, conservatives lose.
Yes.
So I'm not a conservative. But if you're remotely right wing, they say, okay, we're going to treat your joke as real, and we're just going to ask you about it for the rest of your life. Oh, but if you talk about child stuff, they don't even interview him. James Gunn needs to sit down with Oprah, and she needs to go, hey, you said a monkey, did this thing to a child, and you said it's hilarious. How do you feel about that, knowing you work around kids? Oh, hey, you shared a video talking about pubescent girls touching themselves, and actually the guy who sent you the video is now a registered sex offender because he actually possessed child porn. So you're friends with the child pornographer. Maybe you ought to talk about that. Oh, and you talked about Justin Bieber and your friend Lloyd Kaufman about how you were, masturbating to a 16-year-old. Hey, how about you interview the guy? But they don't even give him the grilling. Give him the grilling. If you want to give a guy redemption, you got to crucify him first. James Gunn hasn't even been crucified yet. They haven't even grilled him. They just go, oh, he made a bunch of jokes. What a prankster. And oh, now Cernovich is a joke police. But meanwhile, last I checked, Owen Benjamin's comedy career isn't doing so good. Oh, because he made jokes. He made racial jokes, which, by the way, if you're white, I don't think you should use the N-word for comedy. Leave that to Chappelle and other people. We have other things we can do. But if you're going to rush to defend pedophile jokes, how come those same people defending James Gunn attack Owen Benjamin, right? It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Here's the thing. I haven't done a deep dive into this pedophile world that you've been kind of exposing for the one reason I just find it extremely disturbing. But here's just my quick thoughts on it. It's well known and established beyond dispute that for decades, young women went to Hollywood and were basically used by powerful men in Hollywood in a sexual manner. They were promised to further their career. Sometimes they were. Weinstein is, I'm sure that, no pun intended, the tip of the iceberg. And it's not just, the thing is, it would even...
That's a joke. That's a joke.
Yes.
Harvey Weinstein. For those of you watching who want to defend James Gunn, go rewind that. See, that's good banter.
It's a double joke. It's a joke about a tip, and since I'm Jewish, I'm making a Berg joke also. So, but it's known. And it's not even just, here's the thing that people need to understand from my point of view. It's not just that he slept with a lot of women. It's that he did really sick things that no one would wrap their heads around normally. Like, it would make sense, like, hey, sleep with me and I'll give you this part. That makes sense. It's just done in business all around the world. I'm going to jerk off into this plant. It does not make sense to me, and it's not something that most people have encountered. At the same time, when you say, well, if you have these powerful executives who are attracted to men, the fact that they wouldn't be doing the same thing. Well, why wouldn't they be doing the same thing in that position? Weinstein was known. Everybody knew. I knew about it. I mean, and I'm a nobody, certainly vis-a-vis Hollywood. So, but the idea that they would be doing this to young men, let's not even say prepubescent. Let's even just say like 16 to 18. Like somehow like, oh my God, this is an outrage and it's impossible. It's like, wouldn't it actually be logically necessary if you're going to have the one to have the other if it's systemic?
Yeah, exactly. And not only logical, but the idea that everybody knew and nobody said anything, right? My favorite tweet about the Harvey Weinstein thing was that Jake Tapper tweeted out, oh, a producer told me that was the biggest open secret. And I was like, well, Jake Tapper, whatever, if only a network where your job was to investigate sources, right? So they all knew about it. In fact, Ronan Farrow had to leave NBC and go to the New Yorker because NBC wouldn't let him run it. So it's like, well, wait a minute. Ronan Farrow, this is not a conspiracy theory. Ronan Farrow had to leave NBC and run it with the New Yorker because NBC wouldn't let him run it. And then all these journalists pile on, oh, yeah, we always knew. And it's like, F you people. You always knew. You're such, they're such vultures, right? Now that, when they're not predators because a predator hunts the prey, right?
Right.
These are vultures. So, Harvey Weinstein is now down for the count, and now they all swoop around and we'll pick at him and we'll get him and we'll take him down. But when it actually comes to having some encouragement, some integrity, they're nowhere to be found.
Yeah, and here's another example. What's weird about Hollywood and Washington to me is that people genuinely believe they know the person that's on the screen. Like, they know what this actor's like in real life. Like I can even see myself saying, hey, I bet you Chris Pratt is a cool guy in real life. If I had to bet money, I'm sure it would be greater than 50% chance. The idea that it's 100% chance is insane, right? Bill Cosby had a reign of terror for decades. So these people are not only just doing things these are not gray area things where it's like, okay, they both got drunk and he put his hand on a girl's thigh. No. This is intent and a level of malevolence that most of us, hopefully, don't even start to think about or imagine. And yet at the same time, they want to pretend that to question their moral integrity is somehow some kind of McCarthyism. And what the funny part is, McCarthyism was true. There were all these secret agents in Hollywood from the beginning. And yet that's what they're going to invoke to be like, well, just because Cosby did it and Weinstein did it doesn't mean anyone else did it. It's like, well, don't you think the fact that Weinstein and Cosby could get away with this for decades tells you something about the culture you guys swim in?
Yeah, but the real problem is the media, because they call it a conspiracy theory, but they said nothing about Weinstein, right? Where are they? That's the whole point. Is I get that Hollywood has been overrun with God knows what, but if you're a journalist and you're Twitter cop, right now there are multiple people from George Soros and Media Matters and all these watchdog groups are going to watch this and, oh my God, what does he say? Journalists, right? They stalk literally every video you do, and you're like, okay, why are you not investigating Hollywood though, right? Why aren't you doing like real stories, right? Instead of BS. And that's the problem. The media is complicit in all of this.
Right. Well, yeah, speaking of complicit in the media, it's just funny what you have done is force them to show their hand. And sometimes they don't even realize they're showing their hand, but they're just kind of like upset. And the good example of this was Congressman Conyers. You wrote a piece about why you had the information. You could have gone public with it yourself. You go, no. I'm going to feed it to BuzzFeed, whose leftist, credentials are beyond reproach. And basically in writing, all these reporters covering it were like, this is indisputably true information. It's indisputably messed up information. But since it came from Cernovich, we have to have a caveat or an asterisk somehow. And this is the textbook example of what are you killing the messenger? And you weren't even the messenger.
So here's the joke I make about the John Conyers thing. Is I said, Mike Cernovich, internet misogynist, gave the big story about Congress. 2 women wrote the article, and you MFers at CNN never had the women on your show. But right?
Yeah.
So look. So my favorite Sherlock Holmes story is about the dog that didn't bark. So a lot of my life is like what didn't happen. So John Conyers resigned from Congress. Seems like a big story.
He's a big shot. He wasn't some rookie. He was around for a long time.
Yeah, 2 women and 1 man worked the story up. They did all the hard work, by the way. And CNN and MSNBC didn't have the female. Nobody even knows who those women are who wrote the article. So in feminist literature, you always hear about how women get erased and all that. And I'm like, you and the media erased the 2 women who actually did all the groundwork on it. Because me, I just got the thing and I was like, well, this is cool. But I didn't, they interviewed like 15 different people. They worked the whole weekend on it. And they've been erased from that whole story. All because people at CNN and MSNBC didn't like me. So, who's the real misogynist and who's the real feminist? I gave a couple of women got a really big story. Should have been nominated for a Pulitzer. They should have been. Never was. That was the John Conyers story was by far the biggest story about a member of Congress last year. And the media just made it disappear because giving shine to a couple of young female journalists might somehow give me a little bit of shine, and you can't have that.
How many? So basically, for people who don't know, you uncovered that there were several sealed settlements between members of Congress who were charged with sexual harassment allegations, right? That some people were paid off using taxpayer money, and these settlements are still under seal. Is that correct?
So, a guy from the Hill, I think, Reed something or whatever. Yeah, he found a chart of there's over 400 sealed sexual harassment settlements. And then I was like, oh, okay. So I tweeted out, if you can get me one of these, I'll pay you $10,000.
Okay.
And then I had a tipster come to me and say, well, I have a tip for you. And I was like, okay. And it was like the Holy Grail. it was literally too good to be true. It messed me up for life because it was too good to be true, and it was also true. And that it's like, oh, okay. So it was like the lottery ticket. And with John Conyers, what he did was he settled the sexual harassment suit, but he paid her severance as the settlement. So it wasn't even documented as a taxpayer-funded settlement. So what he did was actually fraud. It was a violation of ethics rules. It went well beyond using taxpayer money to settle it because he kept her on payroll, and it was like hush money. So yeah, the layers of corruption were multiple.
Now, but there's other. To quote Trump, there's many such cases. Correct?
Over 400.
Now, let's also be clear. Just because there's a settlement does not mean the person did anything wrong necessarily. It could be someone is getting a shakedown from an employee or something like that. But the point is they were being paid with taxpayer money. And here's what I don't get. I'm perfectly willing to believe that even the vast majority of these are shakedowns. Let's pretend. The point is, the press is so desperate to get like the Cohen tapes, understandably. They wanted Trump's tax returns, understandably. His health records, understandably. That's their job. They're doing it correctly. This is the president, or he was the nominee. Let's get to the data. That's extremely legitimate. The fact that there's hundreds, you're saying, of settlements in Congress with people who are still in Congress, and they're not talking about this literally every day, I can't wrap my head around it.
Yeah, there are over 400 sealed settlements involving members of Congress or their high-level staff paid with taxpayer money. Yeah, and you're right. Sexual harassment, there are false accusations. Of course there are. Settlement is not an admission of guilt. It's just an admission that it might cost you more time and money to deal with. So yeah, but it's taxpayer money. That's the whole point is you're using taxpayer money for these like secret confidential things, and where's the media? So that's the whole point, and this is a point that I try to explain to well-meaning journalists out there. As I go, if you're a well-meaning journalist and you want to know why people hate you, it's because you go after Trump and Republicans with the fire and fury that you forget about with the Democrats. Where are you? Why aren't they pounding the doors of Congress? Unseal the deals. Because remember, when the John Conyers story broke, Killibrand and all these people said, oh, yeah, we're going to sponsor legislation to unseal the deals. And then everybody's like, yeah, well, what happened to that? Right? Nobody's even asking. But Trump had unprotected sex with a porn star 10 years ago. That's a real story. But this other stuff, we don't even care about.
Yeah, I think what I'm very pleased, a lot of times I have arguments with people about whether things are getting better or things are getting worse. And I think that things are getting much, much better because when we have sowing cynicism and distrust towards these institutions that are supposed to be looking out for us, when in fact I regard them as nefarious, I think that's only a good thing. And the fact that people are realizing, wait a minute, this isn't one or two bad actors in the media or in Hollywood or Washington. This is a cultural, actual systemic thing that I think is, in a sense, one of the ultimate red pills. It's like, wait a minute, this isn't. And honestly, Al Franken was the least of them. Like what he did compared to what some of these other people do is nothing. I think I actually admire him because the man clearly has shame and feels guilt. Because what he did compared to, what's her name? That congresswoman who kicked the school teacher out of the plane just so she could have her seat. That's Sheila Jackson Lee. That's unconscionable. The Bill Cosby's unconscionable. What about and it's the thing is when you and other people point out a lot of the things that these Hollywood people do, like there are these Disney shows. I forget the guy's name. He used to be on Head of the Class. Dan something, and he would write some show, and then people put together a compilation of how there's all these gratuitous shots of children or young teens getting their feet massaged and tickled and all this stuff, and it's like if you realize what's going on, it's really often, if not disturbing, at least odd.
So this guy he used to work at Nickelodeon, and he parted ways because there's some things coming his way. But yeah, for example, he had a young teen audience and an audience of children, and he said, tweet me pictures of your feet.
Yeah. What's his name again? I'm blanking on his name. Dan Schneider.
go, yeah. It's like, what? That's in the open. In what world does somebody not say, hey, bro, you work at a kids network, you're asking people to send you pictures of their feet, their kids. Maybe, put on the brakes, bro. But they're so degenerate and debased and anything goes that to them, that's like normal. And that's another thing, I guess, that people don't see about it and why they call it, they go, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist or whatever. It's like, no. If you think asking underage people for pictures of their feet is normal and not anybody in your business or social circle is there to say like, hey, bro, no, this is really creepy. And God knows what they're doing when people aren't around.
Yeah, right. And I asked my friend about like the Louis C.K. stuff and like guys jerking off in the subway here in New York, something I thankfully have never seen, but a lot of my female friends have seen. And I said, I can't. And they said, look, a lot of these guys get off on the humiliation. And in this case, these guys get off on the fact that they're doing in the open and they're getting away with it. And that it's I mean, it must give them a thrill. I mean, I'm speculating and I could be talking out of my ass. Let's be fair. But that they're working for Disney or Nickelodeon, they're publicly doing things like this and they're getting away with it. You can understand the adrenaline rush behind it if that's your context.
Have you watched Billions ever? The Showtime show?
No.
Okay. So Shauna and I, my wife and I, we watch it, and one of the people in there is a submissive. So just people are into their kink, when they have they step on them and everything. Yeah, people have their kink, and whatever adults do with other adults, I don't kink shame. Whatever you're into, if you want to crawl around on banana peels or whatever, while a woman in high heels steps on your hand, yeah, fine. But if you're working around kids, and by the way, talk about living in like a world, the left always says Trump gaslights us.
Right.
We're the ones being gaslighted.
Right.
In what world do I have to say, hey, if you work around kids, don't talk about having sex with kids, right?
Public, right.
That's a controversial position. That's where I feel like, oh wow, should I say this, or will I get attacked for saying that? What in the hell is going on?
Michael Malice here. Today's episode is sponsored by HeshiSocks.com. That's HeshiSocks.com. The most comfortable kick-ass fashion socks for work or play. The problem with typical socks, they're thin, they provide no protection. If you're wearing nice shoes, your feet hurt, and they're overpriced. If you go to stores, they're like $30 each. I don't do that. Don't do that. Here's what makes Heshi Socks different. They cut out the middleman. They give you high-quality, affordable socks that are all cushioned in the footbed, the heel, and the toe. It's like pillows for your feet. They have arch support in the center of your foot so they stay secure like athletic socks. And they're made with high-end Pima cotton. Pima's super soft cotton that's highly breathable and absorbent if your feet sweat. And they're antimicrobial. It kills the bacteria, keeps your feet from stinking. So basically, they're helping you get laid when you take your shoes off. You can order in different styles, basic and faction. You can wear them with dress shoes. You could wear them with sneakers. Go to HeshiSocks.com. That's HESHI Socks.com. They're crazy comfortable. They look great. And here's the kicker. No pun intended. If you use the code WELCOME30, you get 30% off. WELCOME30, 30% off. That's HeshiSocks.com, promo code WELCOME30. So let's get back into it. One of the things I tweeted out recently, and I stand by, is Michael Ian Black hits Dana Lash, the gun rights activist, on a daily basis. And she slams him on a daily basis. And I'm like, I'm not joking, I'm not being ironic, I'm not being sarcastic. I think he's got some sub-fantasy, and he gets off on the fact that she's humiliating him publicly. Like, it's just... Go ahead.
No. There's a bunch of people like that. That's why I used to really dunk on people on Twitter, and then some of them liked it too much, and I realized that I had inadvertently become their like dominatrix on Twitter, and they were, because they kept, you can tell they like, there's banter, and then there's people who are like too eager.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm like part of this person's fantasy. Gross. So I don't do that anymore.
Because there's no reason for him to fixate on Dana Lash personally. There's many gun people, especially gun politicians, where he could really have the same thing, blood on your head. Ted Cruz, and Wayne LaPierre, the head of the NRA. There's so many of them where he could go after with the same verbiage. The fact that he fixates on this one attractive female, to me, is like, okay, there's got to be some reason. Now, my theory could be wrong, but I can't think of any other reason why, other than the fact that she's responding to him, that he is latching on to her per se.
Yeah, that's why a lot of those guys do it. She is, in a way, and by the way, we're not sexualizing Dana Loesch for the Media Matters people watching. We're talking about how creepy your little Soros friends are.
Let me even correct you. I tweeted this out, and I'm convinced, and she liked the tweet. She follows me. We follow each other because she's not. That's the other thing. She's not dumb. Like, she's a savvy woman who has an understanding of this. Happens to her a lot. She has these tweets where people talk to her in the most vulgar, offensive, sexual terms, and yet there's no guys, let's give her space. Like, her political views are abhorrent. She's a terrorist. All the good stuff that you could say about her. But this is a bridge too far. They don't run interference for her. They're just like, fine, okay, let her just be attacked and called and Melania is another one. Just called the most horrific, vulgar terms constantly.
Well, did you see the tweets that went viral yesterday? The guy who's running for Congress, and he's actually in Oregon, saying Melania works by the hour. She's a hoe bag. Just the most, again, vile things about Melania Trump. And that's the Democrats. And where's the media saying, do you So this is another reason, too, people say I fixate on the media. And it's like, well, I mean, you're right, because we live in a media world,
right? And
a congressional candidate, so we have to hear about Paul and all these other, any random idiot on the right, we have to hear about. So, okay, here's the Democrat candidate. Why are the journalists out on the phone saying, do you disavow? Will the Democrats disavow this? No, but they're all up, Corey Stewart's butt because of some picture from 5 years ago. They're up a guy's butt because he's into Bigfoot erotica, which is fine. Be up the guy's butt over Bigfoot erotica. But if you have a candidate for Congress calling Melania Trump a hoe bag, she works by the hour, making, he made a what I viewed as a sexual assault threat against her. Where's the media, right?
Yeah.
They're no.
And let's look at a parallel universe. Let's suppose Melania Trump was the first lady in a Democratic administration. We have a former supermodel or model. I don't know if she's technically a supermodel in the White House. We have an immigrant, the first lady not to be born in the United States since I think John Adams' wife, something crazy since the early 1800s. We have she speaks 5 or 6 languages. The press coverage, if she was a Democrat's wife, would be, and I'm not a Republican at all, would be absolutely, look, oh my God, we have an immigrant in the White House. This is amazing. What does this mean for America? Finally, blah, blah, blah. Look, we have a model in the White House, Vogue, Marie Claire, Elle. She'd be on every cover. It's like one of our own is there. And also, she's showing that a beautiful woman can be smart. She's a polyglot. Look at her talking all these things. English is not her first language, but she could deliver speeches. There's none of that. It's absolute silence. And this is odd because historically, even in recent history, the wife of the president was regarded as quite different than the president. Laura Bush did not get shit for George W. Bush. She was respected. She's a nice librarian. She's quiet. They didn't make fun of her, talk on her. This is a whole thing, other thing altogether, don't you think?
Well, not only that, but remember Peter Fonda said he wanted to kidnap Barron Trump, who's 13, put him in a cage while pedophiles raped him?
Yeah.
That's Hollywood. The idea that children are not even off limits now to these. So people go, oh, Cernovich, you have this conspiracy theories about pedophiles. And I'm like, wait a minute. Peter Fonda is overtly saying in the open that he wants children to be raped in cages. So you show me the theory there, right? This is what they're saying in the open. So not only are wives no longer off limits, but the children aren't either, and that shows the left they have no moral compass anymore.
One of the things that you did when you did A Night for Freedom here in New York, there's something that you did which I thought would really help a lot of people. You had the venue pulled from you at the last minute, and you did a walkthrough at the space it was supposed to be. You had your camera in front of you, and people like to mock you and talk of you being this dude bro, frat boy type. But you were openly saying, this sucks. I'm freaking out. This is a problem. There was no like, yeah, dude, I'm going to crush it. And I think you encourage a lot of guys to be much more open and comfortable about their feelings instead of posturing and being macho when inside it's like, you know what, this fucking sucks.
Yeah, I mean, when I walked outside the venue, so for those of you listening, maybe you don't know the backstory, we booked a venue where the guy was a friend of my co-organizer, and my friend, was like, it's on for sure. The guy told me it was on for sure. The day before the event, he goes, oh, you can't have it. We need a permit. So for those of you, so basically we got punked by the guy. He pretended it was going to happen just because he thought it would be funny or whatever. So I did a walkthrough Friday at 3 p.m. The event's supposed to happen Saturday at 2 p.m. Doors open. So yeah, I'm like, oh man, this is bad. I go outside, I'm like dry heaving, just from the stress of it all, because we had done, a bunch of tickets. People flew from all over the world.
Yeah.
But I persevered, and then we did another venue, second venue. That venue canceled at 2 a.m. So I had no venue the Saturday of the event, and then finally, but the media, of course, will never tell about that. That's a good story. 2 venues cancel on you. You persevere. You go to the bank. You got to get the guy who needed $30,000 cash. So I just went and got the cash money.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the thing is it's okay to stress out. And in fact, if you don't stress out, it means you don't care. You're not bought in, right?
Right.
If you're blasé about it, then that means you're not actually committed to what you're working on. So you should feel emotion.
Yeah. So one of the other things is A Night for Freedom. One thing I've seen change in the last couple of months is, and this still happens, but I think it's happening less. There used to be this broad brush that anyone who's right of center, who's not a traditional conservative, they basically call Klan, Nazi, alt-right. And you and people like, let's say, Jordan Peterson, whatever, would just say, we're not alt-right. We're not conservatives, but we're not alt-right. And now they've actually started making that distinction sometimes, which blew my mind. They've actually come around. Like I saw an article it was Vice. When Vice was talking about the Twitter ban, they said, this is affecting alt-right people like X, Y, and Z, but also, people on the right like Mike Cernovich and Jack Posobiec. And I'm like, wow, for Vice to be able to make that distinction, the fact that they're actually listening at all, I think is a great thing.
Well, yeah, I've been promoted to far right.
Yeah, but that is a big deal.
It's a promotion. But so the thing is, when they called everybody alt-right, all you're actually doing is, because if you go, oh, Cernovich is alt-right, you think, oh, I'm really hurting him. What you're doing is you're telling people you're promoting the alt-right because people love me. You're like, oh, Cernovich is alt-right, and then people are like, oh, Cernovich, like, he's a fun guy. What is it? What is this whole thing? So it's actually counterproductive and dumb to do that, because all you do is make people like something that you think is bad.
Yeah, one of the other I saw an interview you did with NPR, and you hung up on the reporter. And you're like, bro, you're fake news, and you just ended it there, and then you released the audio yourself. What is your criterion for how do you know when it's like, all right, there's no point in talking to this person further, as opposed to, okay, they don't get me, but they're not coming from a bad place, so I can still talk to them.
Right. So I've been grilled for 14 hours by a Vice reporter. I've been grilled by 60 Minutes. If you want to grill me, that's fine. But if all you want to do is like, you think you got something on me and that's the only thing you want to talk about, then what's the point, right? That tells me you're not a real... Here's what a real journalist would say if you're reporting on Mike Cernovich. Here's this guy. He actually does get some stories. Oh, but there's this Pizzagate thing too going on. And he does well in the mindset area. Seems like a positive guy, but he's, said all this other stuff, which is like insane. Like, what the hell is this guy's deal? I'm okay with that. But if you go, Mr. Cernovich, you're an evil person, then, okay, well, why are we talking? I don't send out press releases. I'm not begging people to give me media or media coverage or whatever. So to me, it's just like, all right, bro, if this is how you want to be, then you can go create a little caricature on your own. But I don't need the page views. I don't want your page views.
Right. Tell me a bit about Hoax. This is your book and movie that you're doing right now. And this has been a long time coming.
Yeah, so we did. Oh, it's real. Did I send it to you? Did I send
not
you a
yet.
rough cut?
No,
Oh my god!
I can't wait.
So the directors blew me away. So Hoax is a film on fake news. There's also a book, hoaxbook.com, one word, that'll take you to the Amazon.
And before you got into that, let's remind people fake news was a leftist concept. Like they came up with this term and it's been used against them because they were setting the groundwork. I said this on my show yesterday for a Hillary victory and then using that concept as a way to weaponize social media to have news sites that they don't approve of to be made invisible. So this was their idea and they were laying the groundwork, correct?
Yeah, Hillary Clinton is healthy and anyone who says is a conspiracy theorist.
Right.
And Hillary Clinton won the election and anybody who says otherwise is scientific. And so, yeah, the media memetically, they created fake news, which was a beautiful meme. I mean, that's as good as anything you'll find on 4chan, right?
Right.
But they didn't think with memetics, you can have that thrown back at you if the label fits, right? So they go, oh, these people are fake news. And we're like, well, wait a minute. All you got on me is Pizzagate. I posted to a hashtag a few times. You guys, we got the weapons of mass destruction. We got the Iraqi soldiers were throwing Kuwaiti babies out of incubators onto the floor. That was fake. We got you on the Hillary Clinton election. We got you on, 100 different things. So a meme is like a nuclear weapon, right? And you think you're going to launch it at somebody. You better make sure though that meme can't be hacked and it can't be turned around. And that's what happened. There's even articles now saying we need to drop the label fake news.
Yeah.
So they're no more.
So yeah, tell me more. So Hoax, you're saying?
All right. So in Hoax, we interview a bunch of people, including some high-profile names that I don't want to mention because I want the media to freak out when it comes out. Okay. Right now, when the media freaks out, disavow. I can't believe you did a film with Cernovich. It won't convert. It's just empty outrage. So, but some very, very big, high-profile names are in it, and not only do we look at the fake news, we look at the Iraq War, we look at the Gulf of Tonkin incident, we look at the lies about the first Iraq War, which a lot of people forget, where the media said, oh, Kuwaiti babies are being taken out by Iraqi soldiers, but actually no, she was the daughter of a prince, and the whole thing was fake and orchestrated. And then we talk about Hillary Clinton's health and all these other hands up, don't shoot. That never happened. That was fake. But we also talk to people who think that I'm fake news. They criticize me. They criticize Alex Jones. So Alex Jones is in the film. Scott Adams is in the film. A few other, high-profile names. Stephen Molyneux was in it. And we just go deep into, what is truth? And kind of like a lot of the conversations you and I are having now, which is a very nuanced thing. I start from the proposition that truth is hard to discern.
Yeah.
And it's hard to know when somebody's being sincerely dishonest or not dishonest, and how do you dictate what is real news and fake news. And one of the instances you pull out that is a good way to show fake news is that, hey, we're fine with the media going after Trump, but there are 400 sealed taxpayer-funded sexual harassment settlements. Why aren't you going after that? Why do you, I always say, show me a correction that was made in an article that was pro-Trump. Nobody can show me one. Show me one time where the media wrote an article favorable to Trump that had to be retracted, right? But we can show you thousands of articles that are anti-Trump or anti-Trump's people that had to be retracted. So if you were an honest person, then you would have mistakes on both sides, right?
And here's another one, the fact that Al Gore won the recount.
Right.
I mean,
exactly.
That's very obvious. That never happened. Michael Moore had fake headlines in his movie. Al Gore wins recount. He literally digitized it. There was no newspaper that said this because it did not happen. But go ahead.
Well, there's that, and then there's the subtle forms of fake news, which is, did you ever watch the CNN crew go down to Florida and confront a grandma for sharing a meme?
Oh, yeah.
Allegedly. Okay, well, Michael Moore attended a rally that was anti-Trump. Why didn't CNN knock on his door? Right?
Right.
USS, what kind of pathetic little punks are you? You're going to go down to some, middle to lower income grandma and say, you shared a meme on Facebook from Russia. Okay, tough guy. Why don't you punch up? Why don't you do what like James Gunn? At least that's punching up. We're talking, all of Hollywood. Why don't you go on Michael Moore's doorstep? You're CNN. You're such tough guys to bully a grandma. And why don't you say, hey, Michael Moore, you participated in Russian propaganda? Well, one, because that wouldn't fit the narrative, which is sorry. The bell is I'm trying to disable messaging.
Oh,
it's just,
okay.
Yeah, so my message is going ding, ding,
Got it.
ding. Listening to it, they're going to be so triggered. Who does that sound? Where? Stop the hammering! Stop the hammering! Yeah, so, but CNN doesn't want to admit that Russia wants us divided, and because of that, they won't go after Michael Moore, and plus they are a bunch of wimps, and they don't want to confront Michael Moore. They want to confront the grandmas and say, look how tough we are, but not realizing, of course, that most people watch that, they're like, wait a minute, you guys are not cool, right? It's like you're not the tough guys here. You're actually harassers and stalkers.
Yeah, I mean, they threatened to sue that kid who had a WWF gif. And they even said, we reserve the right to sue him in the future. I mean, for a network to be threatening a private citizen like that is unconscionable in writing. It's not even like we're misinterpreting their words.
Well, the meme hunting was right. That was the whole point about the WWF GIF, which is, okay, you're hunting down a meme maker. Fine. Okay, fine. But why don't you hunt down the congressional sexual harassment settlements, right? That's the whole point. Is always on one end. They never, because for example, a journalist that I think does really good work is that K-File guy, but he doesn't pull up stuff on Democrats. 1 in 10 might be on Democrats. It's like, oh wait, so Democrats don't have offensive social media posts. Democrats aren't doing tweets. So for me, I would just say, if you want to be respected as the media, we're the media and we're not just hacks, then you got to be able to show me, no, we're taking scalps left, right, center, you name it. There's some higher principle.
Yeah, so one of the things that people want to think that you're partisan and you're basically a Republican Party operative, which is to me kind of insane, because you go after Republicans brazenly and openly. You just went after David French, for example, saying you guys are powerless. You're not in a position to make a deal at all, which I thought was hilarious. Let's say this: who would you say left of center are journalists who are decent people who are trying to get it right?
Oh, I mean, there are actually quite a few. Glenn Greenwald, Michael Tracy. I'm always reluctant to answer this because then people are going to say, if Cernovich likes him, he must be a bad guy.
Right.
Caitlin Johnstone, probably my favorite living writer is a woman named Caitlin Johnstone, who she writes about all kinds of issues from a left-wing populist position. And by the way, she's a socialist. I'm not, but I'm an adult. So I can read a person's article and say, well, that's an interesting point of view.
Right.
That's provocative. I enjoy what you're doing. I think you're wrong. I think your ideas are bad, but that's it. So she's good. There's Politico is actually pretty good. There's 2 Joshes who work at Politico, and I just call them the GNFs, give no fucks. And if they have a story, they'll run it. They give no fucks. BuzzFeed, actually, to their credit, they ran the John Conyers thing.
Yeah.
There was no CNN wouldn't have run that at all. There's no, stop the hammer. I've tried to disable it in every way possible. Apple, once they whoever's texting me, stop. I'm going to tell them to stop texting me, please.
Yeah.
Stop texting. Okay.
Who would you say is the worst? Is it Jim Acosta?
Nah, he's just a stunt queen. Jim Acosta is. I always say people want to crap all over Laura Loomer, but Jim Acosta is worse than her, right?
Oh, yeah.
She's not going to the White House making a scene. She's going, up to people at their book signings and stuff. It's like a completely different decorum. So Loomer does better stuff but that's what's funny. Nobody says, Loomer's going after Bill Clinton and Uma and all these people, but Jim Acosta, he's such a great guy. So he's just he just wants that viral fame. He probably is jealous of the internet celebrities, and because of that, he wants to become one. The worst are the real bottom feeders. like the people like the Daily Beast, Huffington Post, where we just know Newsweek, where we know they just make stuff up. So Newsweek, for example, they fabricated an article claiming that when Al Franken was in trouble, I hired bots to post to a hashtag. And so my lawyer sent him a letter. They had to retract it because it's fake. But what offended me is the hashtags were corny. It was like, it wasn't that you accused me falsely. It was the hashtag was like Gropin Franken. And I was like, Gropin Franklin? How dare you boomers? I would never use a hashtag like that. My hashtag would be vicious, sick Hillary or, whatever. And so those like bottom tier, because the problem is those gutter sites, they still end up on Wikipedia. So Wikipedia will use information from the bottom feeding fake news, outright fabrication sites to fabricate your bio. So my bio says Mike Cernovich, alt-right social media personality. And they're like, well, the Daily Beast said you were. It's like, come on, bros. The Daily Beast is not a real journalistic outlet. They don't fact check. The Huffington Post doesn't fact check. Newsweek doesn't fact check. They don't have any editorial procedures in place. So the New York Times is actually they do good work. Washington Post, they're biased, but the real bottom feeders are the worst that we have, because if it didn't end up on Wikipedia, you're like, well, that's just another blogger swimming in the sewer. Right. Because it can be used to manipulate Wikipedia, that's why they're nasty.
You turn something up.
On your computer,
and now I'm an echo. Okay.
Oh no! Did you just make an echo joke?
No, I think I'm hearing myself. Oh, now it went away. Okay, we're good. So here's the other thing. What's fascinating? Like, let's talk about Kathy Griffin, right? They have these three ideas in their minds that they don't realize the amount of people are getting sick of their stuff. And I'm using there in a very, very broad sense and in an unscientific sense. On the one hand, we have the narrative that this is only 20 people in their mom's basement. On the other hand, we say, okay, it's a lot of people, but these people are bots. And then we have, no, it's a huge movement that's behind Trump. It's like, these are not ideas that are congruent with each other. And also the idea that, like, if you put something out, basically, you're forcing all these followers to do your bidding. It's like, yeah, I think it's not weird that if you point out something, or you or anybody else, if Kathy Griffin points out something is hypocritical, that she's going to have a lot of people responding in kind.
Yeah, so to plug a book that isn't mine.
Yes, Scott he was on the show 4 weeks ago, yeah.
Beautiful, yes. Everybody should read, this is probably the most important book of the year in terms of understanding Trump and everything. There's this like cognitive dissonance setting, which is Cernovich so for example, they'll call me French. It's like, well, you might not like me, but I call it the airplane fame test. Every time I'm at the airport and get on an airplane, I get a thumbs up. So that's a level of fame.
Not the okay symbol?
No more okay. So whatever I am, it's just factually inaccurate to say I'm French.
Right.
It's just not true. So, but you're right. But then they go, oh, he's a French character. Oh, but he has all this power, and all these people do his bidding, and he's got an army. It's like, wait a minute. I'm a French character, but I have an army. And by the way, I wish the army turns on me, man. God help me if I tweet something they don't like. That's what I love when they're like, oh, he commands this army. I'm like, oh, man. I one time tweeted that I thought Barack Obama was, like, overall a pretty good guy.
Yeah.
And I deleted that tweet because I was like, oh, there's, like, a mutiny happening right now. So I don't have an army that I can command, but if they see something they don't like and we agree on that, then they express themselves, right? So people go, oh, he's French. It's this. Like, no. They're like a lot. Like when I was in New York, every block. I mean, you were at the New York event, Night for Freedom. That's a big event. That's not
right.
That's a real, and we put that on short notice. There were venue problems, and we oversold it. So whatever we aren't French, but the media doesn't want to say he's very popular,
right?
Because then that's social proof, and so they don't know what to do, and then they're kind of just vacillate and shake their arms and freak out.
So me and you have a little bit of a disagreement, and I want to pick your brain on it. You say that you're no longer interested in trolling, which of course is my pretty much favorite thing to do. I sent out a troll tweet yesterday, and you and Rogan both retweeted it, and I had to spend a few hours dealing with people who took it at face value. What is your position? Why is your position shifted?
Because so one is people don't, okay, so let's just say some percentage of people do not understand satire sincerely.
Right.
So they read stuff, they just don't get it. They're not even acting in bad faith. So when you have 1,000 people follow you on Twitter and you just tweet out something that's satirical, maybe 1 or 2 people don't get the joke. When it's 430,000 people, you now have like thousands of people freaking out, DMing you. Oh my God, I can't believe you. I'm like, bro, it was satire, you know? That's where, fame is like a cage where, you think, oh, I'm going to become famous and what do you do? And you realize like you actually have less power and freedom when you're a nobody, because when you're a nobody, when you slip up, there's nobody watching. But for me, everything I do is like on a microscope. People don't understand things. People, like one time I tweeted out, I was like, oh yeah, Islam is the future. And people are like, oh my God. No, I'm just telling you, there are more of them. They're immigrating to Europe. They're reproducing at a faster rate than Christians and other groups, and other than Jews and everybody else. So that's just a demographic truth. It isn't an expression of my preferences. But people are like, oh my God, I knew it. It's stealth jihadi. I'm like, oh my God, you people. I was just telling you that if, I said, I'm long Islam, short Christianity. That's how I put it, actually. Yeah. People, yeah. But I'm like, well, no, but if you were actually investing and you were saying in 100 years, which will be the dominant religion in America, then the smart bet would be on Islam and right. But that doesn't mean I wish it were the case. I'm just telling people what the truth is. And a lot of people don't get it. And then it just becomes a lot of drama. Yeah, so
one of the baffling things to me is Time Magazine since the 20s has had Man of the Year, now it's Person of the Year, and they explicitly say this is the person who has influenced our world the most this year. So they had Hitler on it at least once, and people are like, oh my God, look, they like Hitler. It's like, no. Are you denying that Hitler had a profound effect on the world? How is this an endorsement? This is just a statement of indisputable fact. And I'm obviously, as a Jew, not particularly fond of Herr Hitler, but they can't get their heads around the same, like what you're saying. It's like, if you're saying Islam is going to be much more popular in the future than it is now, you're not a cheerleader. You're just looking at data.
Yeah. So if I even say something like that, which I think is like colored within the lines, there's like a mutiny. So the idea that I'm going to use high level satire and meta commentary or take an article from Cosmo, and, because the stuff that gets me in trouble, I'm like, that was an article on Cosmo. Literally, I'm quoting, a woman's magazine. But so it's like, I can't even quote Cosmo and not get into trouble. So for me, the margin of error, and plus I'm a very high level target. Everybody's looking to catch me slipping. So for me, I'm like, not even going to come close to saying anything. Let them. Because right now I'm the number one. Well, Alex Jones is actually. Yeah. And by the way, Alex Jones, I told him a year ago. I go, Alex, you got to quit trolling people. So then he still does it, like with the Mueller sketch and everything. And I'm like, bro, you can't do that anymore. Like I had sit down with him before the Megyn Kelly thing. I'm like, bro, you're way too big to troll people. You can't troll. But he still is, and now he keeps getting into trouble. So I'm the same way. Like I can't really troll. I can't really. Goof off. You and I used to crack a lot of jokes now that, we'll have to keep in private because it's just the nature of the game. And I'm not like a victim or something, but that's just the truth. I'm too high profile.
Yeah, the articles will now say Mike Cernovich, who tweeted that Islam is the future, and it's factual but not truthful. The example I've used on Twitter before, and I'm sure you'll agree with, is here's how it goes: fact versus truth. You can have someone buys a supermarket and shuts it down, right? They're a developer. It's factual to say that. The headline might say, store owner refuses to sell food to children. Or they could say refuses to sell food to hungry black children. That is factual. It is not truthful. And they do this all the time. They will say something that is a fact. And they say, look, it's a fact, but it's not the truth of what's going on. And they do this with you. They do this with Alex and with Milo. It'll be like Cernovich or Milo, comma, who wants blah, 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 comma. And it's just as an aside, and it works kind of like a warning label to know that this person is someone you should not spend time listening to up front.
Yeah, when you interviewed me for your book, I actually call that the parenthetical of death, right? So it's the comma, I think that's called the parenthetical. And that's what the little parenthetical of death. We're going to kill this person before we even say. So they don't say Mike Cernovich, comma, author and filmmaker, comma, or Mike Cernovich, comma, who broke the John Conyers story, comma. No. That's not how they do it. But when they write about James Gunn, they won't say James Gunn, comma, who said all this stuff about pedophile jokes, comma. So they'll say, oh, James Gunn, director, is great guy, great human being, and then they'll just bury that. So that's how they use the parenthetical of death as another kind of form of fake news.
Yeah, I talk about that. Like I said, if they were being even-handed about it, it would say Bill Clinton, comma, who has been accused of sexual assault by multiple women over decades, comma, spoke at the Democratic convention this week. That's how it would start. I mean, any Republican article, and what drives me also crazy is not only that it's disingenuous, it's that now I feel like I have to fucking run interference with the Republican Party, which is like something that I'm violently opposed to. But again, this is exactly what they do, and it's maddening.
Yeah, I've said that before, where I go, I'm resentful that I have to do what I have to do, because I don't carry water for anybody at all. So I resent that I have to, just in the nature of truth and keeping the world kind of balanced, have to do what I have to do. I shouldn't have to do that. There are 100,000 of them. One of me. Why don't 1,000 of them just actually start to play a straight game, a clean game, and call the shots on both sides? So there is a resentment, like you said. I'm not trying to defend Republicans. I don't like Republicans. I think Republicans hate America just as much as Democrats hate America. But somebody has to call out both sides.
Yeah. Last question, because what do you think? They're clearly smell blood in the water, and they're clearly circling. What do you think is going to happen with Alex Jones?
Oh man, I worry about those lawsuits, because the people who filed them don't want to settle. They want to take it to trial, and they want to have a Gawker level verdict against Alex. So I definitely. That is the thing that I'm watching most closely. The media, because they're not strategic thinkers, most journalists are, they're all, oh, what did Alex Jones say today? And they're just kind of like chipping away. And it's kind of like how the media is obsessed with Stormy Daniels, and they didn't pay attention to the fact that Trump has stacked the federal judiciary in a way that's going to have implications for the next 20 to 40 years. So the Alex Jones stuff, they're just chipping away, trying to get him banned from platforms. But the real existential threat are these lawsuits.
Do you think he's going to get kicked off of YouTube? Gun to head, if you have to make a prediction.
Oh, he's definitely going to be banned.
Okay, yeah. I mean, if they're already talking about him putting out trial balloons, the cost benefit is enormous for them. The benefit is huge. They get to be like, we're the good guys, we're not fake news. The cost is the cost of his business, which is negligible to them. And I think it's almost a no-brainer, but go ahead.
Yeah, exactly right. And Alex, again, because I just friend to friend, man to man, told him, like, you can't troll, I can't troll. None of us control anymore. And he still does it. So he's giving them, material. You just got to realize, like, we all grow up now, and we got to be boring. Let the younger guys, let the kids, do their thing. Give the kids their own channels. Maybe buy a plane ticket for the kids now and then. But I can't go to rallies. I can't go to events. I couldn't even go to Charlottesville to report on it, because the media would have said Mike Cernovich, who attended Charlottesville. They wouldn't be like, no, he hates these guys. He was just streaming it because he likes drama and controversy, right? So I can't even go to these events because of what they'll do. And that's the world we live in, dude. That's the world we live in.
I was there. You didn't miss much. It was very interesting, but you did. It's fine that you didn't go.
Yeah, well, but the Portland one I would love to be at August 4th.
Yeah.
Just to stream it. And, because I like watching Street Fighter videos, which I don't tweet out anymore. Like, I like watching that stuff. And so but if I report on it, they'll just say Mike Cernovich, who attended the event, did the following. So that's where all of us are, and we need to let the kids have fun, and we need to just be boring.
Well, this was not a boring interview. And Mike, thank you so much for taking the time. Hoaxbook.com. We're going to have the links in the show notes description. I look forward to speaking to you soon, and hopefully you'll be in New York at some point, and we could talk more in person. Thank you so much.
See you soon.
Take care.